the big turn on the writing and theater business happened when we were in Europe. This was after San Francisco, when JoAnne Akalaitis had hooked up with Phil Glass, and they were living together in Paris, and Ruth and I were staying on their floor. And then Phil went to India. He was on a Fulbright at the time, and he went to India, and we took over that place. Now, little by little, the hottest thing that was going on at that particular time was word from Poland about Grotowski and the Theatre Laboratorium. And so then there came word that Grotowski was going to teach a workshop in Aix-en-Provence. Ruth and JoAnne decided they wanted to go. So they went to that workshop. And later on, we kind of hooked up with the Grotowski people, particularly Cieslak, who became a good friend. And a lot of Grotowski and poor theater stuff kind of came into our way of thinking. It gave us a kind of a conceptual base. It was the next step after Stanislavski. Grot was saying that he was the next step after Stanislavski, that he was basically a method director, and that he was just, looking beneath. The way I understood it was that the Stanislavski system helped you motivate psychology, and that when you got to Grotowski, you were looking for psychological states that were below the social psychology that went into doing a Chekhov performance. So, you started getting down to, okay, there's that girl spinning in the middle of the street on 2nd Avenue. What's going on with her that makes that spin happen? And et cetera. What motivates what we might call aberrant psychological behavior, or strange physical takes on things. So that came with the whole Grotowski physical take. When JoAnne and Ruth got back, we kind of half thought, well, the time has come to start a theater. And we experimented with places that we could do it. We tried London for a little bit, and nothing really clicked in terms of a way of getting any support. JoAnne and Phil moved back to New York, and then they told us, come here. It was LBJ's Great Society, and welfare was rampant. So we actually started a theater on welfare.
I think I'm just curious. I mean, I'm still going to get back to getting you to Mabou Mines and the formation of it. But I'm thinking about, you're talking about Grotowski, and I'm thinking about Contour, because I see you having so much more in common with Tadeusz Kantor.
We later hooked up with Contour, and he really became a big influence. We went to the Contour Museum, and in fact, you saw Contour in La Divina. I stole his wonderful Nazis. He had Nazis that were the uniforms on hangers and the hats, playing violins and things like that. They were great. So the women singers, the puppets, had no faces. They just had hats and stuff like that. And that was it was stolen directly from Contour. I think Contour was a genius. I love, his very sophisticated, take on theater. He used to sit on stage during a performance and react to everybody as they were going. Like the whole play was for him. And it was great because we could appreciate it through his attitude, or we could have our own attitude and we could compare the two. And so, Contour became very, very important. And, the stuff that I saw of his, I think they were at La Mama. It was really, really critical. Grotowski came to be kind of, a drag and a cliche after a while. Let's go live in trees and let's, I have much more interesting ways to get to a spiritual base. I know, the Black Church can teach me a lot more about it than living in a tree in Poland can do it. So I applied once to go and do one of his workshops and never made it. So it just never, it didn't quite fly, you know.
In 1968, he did a work or 69, he did a workshop here, and I was in the Playhouse The Ridiculous.
Right.
And I went, and I lasted about a half hour.
Hmm.
You know, I was like, no.
Hmm.
Also, Grotowski's use of music. When I went to see Grotowski at La Mama 2, I felt so much in common with him because I use music in an emotional way,
Yeah.
the way Jack Smith did also.
Right, right.
And you do too.
Yeah.
There's like a commonality. But Tadeusz also, you know, the music would come up and it would push the emotions of
Right.
the audience and me. I mean, if I'm not moved, I'm not that interested.
Mhm.
So I feel like we should talk about your role with music and collaboration, but I think I have to go back first
Go back
to
to
Mabou
Mabou
Mines.
Mines.
First of all, you know, you've said this a million times, what Mabou Mines comes from and how this collective formed and what the individuals in the collective brought to the table.
Okay, well, the original group were myself, Phil Glass, David Warrilow, JoAnne Akalaitis, and Ruth. And we started working in Paris where we did Beckett's play. We did a Beckett series there at the Rue de Dragon in Paris. And little did I know it, but Beckett sent one of his friends to see it, and the word got back that it was great. And so we got all of this support that we had done something that Beckett really, really liked. And we all were sure that it was time to actually start our own thing. Ruth and David and I went to Poland and actually talked to Grotowski, and he told us a very, very interesting thing, which I believe. And he said, if you really believe in my method, your work will look nothing like mine. Nobody will stand on their heads. Nobody will do, you know. And he was dead on. So I really feel that in following him precisely, my work is nothing like his, not anywhere close. And in fact, it's much more like Cantor's, you know. So I think that that was a release. It was like, go your own way, you know, go. And, but Grotowski was a hot ticket back here in New York, and the fact that we'd studied with him, you know, attracted a couple of people. And I think that the Mabou Mines Collective came about this way. It was shocking, Penny, to think that this little group of Poles stuck in a basement someplace in Wrocław, it wasn't even a hot college town yet. In fact, it was bombed out. First time we went to Wrocław, we stayed in the hotel Hitler stayed in, and half the city was still bombed out. Everybody was drunk because it was payday, and you know, they had just gotten paid, and everybody got their pint of vodka, you know. But it was pretty amazing. So they did this basement, and we thought, what an idea that 4 or 5 people, if they really plug in and they dedicate their life to what they're doing, can make a dent, can actually find a way to make a statement in this insanely complex capitalistic world, and little by little, his thing started growing. He got a reputation in Poland, and then, you know, he was a hit in Paris, he was a hit in London, came to the United States, got sucked into the United States, and that was the end of him. But, you know, everybody, this is got to end someplace. It might as well end here. I don't think you come out of the whirlpool of the United States very easily. So, but we were inspired by the fact that it looked like, you know, the kids can do type attitude behind it. You go there, you work, you try to put your own thing together. It's distinctive enough, and it's different enough that you really do have something to say, and that somebody is out there who's going to listen. What happened to Mabou Mines was that as the 70s finished and we went into the 80s, we went to the 90s, as society changed, fewer and fewer people were listening. You know, of course, there was always this attitude about the collective. That made everybody put us on the left side of everything, and that we were up on the left side. There's no question about it, but it was an easy, way to get the knife out,
To
And
marginalize you.
yeah. So the thing, on the marginalizing, it was harder to marginalize us then because there was a lot more, support. The Village Voice was real at that point. There was, Bunny Moranka was writing for that other little newspaper. There was actual credibility outside of the Times and outside of Uptown and outside of the money interests who were controlling media. Little did I know about the level that media control could get to, because I hadn't lived till today. Now, it's a total fascination for me how deeply media can control everything. I mean, what a McLuhan world we do live in, And we believed in a collective art. A lot of things went into that. Ruth and David and I basically took the train over and hitchhiked and lived next to Checkpoint Charlie and went over and worked at the Berliner Ensemble every day for a couple of weeks. And Vogel was great. It was her last show. She was doing, I forgot the role. Coriolan. She was doing Coriolan's mother and the Brecht-inspired production of Coriolan. And she did her mother thing. We slept on the floor. We would sneak Beatles records in for the kids through Checkpoint Charlie. It was a lot of fun. And, it really got a hit on what it was to be behind the wall. But the greatest thing was I saw how collective creation worked, at least there. I was watching a rehearsal of Modest Man, and there was a chorus of all of these dudes dressed as kind of British, soldiers in shorts and flat helmets and everything like that, and doing a dance routine. And there were about 6 directors in the audience, and each one was watching a different actor. And, when they stopped and talked, the actors and the directors all had a big conversation about how it worked, how it went. Everybody went and got into the mix, and everybody was talking about it. And there was one director who had kind of control over the whole thing, and who's worried, a woman whose word was final. But it's the way we chose to try to work collectively with Mabou. One person would work, and the whole company would sit there and, be worked too. And, there would be one director, someone in control of the whole situation, but we tried pretty much everything everybody came up with.
So in the beginning, though, when it was, were people bringing specifically their own thing? I mean, Philip Glass is a musician.
Yeah.
David Warrilow and, Fred.
I wrote the texts. Philip, music was what we used. And, JoAnne and Ruth and David brought acting ideas, and then both JoAnne and Ruth, moved into directing a little bit, But at that particular point, we all kind of, the big thing about Grotowski that was helpful also was that he tried to give actors validity, that their material was as important. They weren't just the tools of writers and the tools of directors. They weren't a classical musician who's given a score and say, play it. That wasn't it. They were bona fide artists, and this is something that Mon and I continue to see as kind of a guiding tenet. The actor brings material as important as the writer. And this basically came from this Grotowski workshop and the contact with him, that the emotional viability of a work depends on what the actor brings. Can't be directed into it. It can only be selected from. So it's the actor who offers the material, the director and others, including the other actors, help choose it and select it. Mm-hmm. And what we have is a creative collaboration.